Hey everyone, welcome to the third episode of the MidVibe.
I am Kshitiz Aneja, and I bring to you one person each week who's at the middle of his or her own journey towards that one big dream. Today I have with me Kshitiz Aneja, a 25-year-old, extremely bright and a very cheerful man. He's an IIM Bangalore graduate and a manager at Coca Cola. He got amputated at the age of 9, because of which his entire life turned upside down. If there's one thing that he would like to change in our society, it would be people treating him differently because of him having a disability. Let's understand more of that part in our conversation. Hi, Kshitiz. Thank you so much for joining. I'm genuinely very, very thankful that you actually said yes to coming onto my platform and sharing your set of stories. So it really means a lot to me.
Thank you, Ashna, for having me and Keshav for referring me.
Oh, yes, a big thanks to him. So,
Yeah.
people who don't know who Keshav is, you can go check out my previous video. He's the guy I don't want to say interview, but he's the guy I had a conversation about his business and his own brand. So you can check that video also.
I just remember this experience from Bangalore. So there was one interview which I did, and I don't know whether that lady was doing it just for the job or something, but she seemed very disinterested in my story, and so I just hope that you don't lose this interesting thing that you
Not at
find in
all.
others.
Not at all. I love listening to people's stories. I love it. So, Kshitiz, my very purpose of having you on this platform was that I firstly start off with how is it that the people in our society are treating people with disabilities differently? Like, what is it that they're doing wrong? Because I still see people who
Sure,
behave in ways in which they aren't supposed to behave, not because they do it intentionally, but because they aren't just aware of it, right?
right, right.
So I want you to just give it out to my audience.
Sure. So I think first off, I'll start with the regulatory authorities, and it's just not for me, but for the entire disability crowd or differently able, whatever term the people may want to use.
Yeah.
But I think regulation needs to be very strict regarding the accessibility first of all.
Mhm.
So the malls or public places or even the roads for such matter are not accessible at all for
Mhm.
especially people walking with crutches or using wheelchairs, or there are not enough books for people having vision issues. So
Mhm.
first we need to really think about getting everything accessible to everyone.
Right.
I know few people in Delhi who are even working on that. So one of them is Nipun Malhotra, who is
Okay.
working, who has actually started his foundation known as Nipman Foundation, and
Okay.
he challenged Delhi government and authorities on such matters, and got a few judgments in his favor as well.
Okay.
Same goes for PT Singh, who won recently against Delhi Transport because they were not using buses that were accessible for wheelchair users. Secondly, going further down the line, these regulations need to be followed with the education practices as well. So the
Mhm.
civil engineers or architects, they need to be trained in such a way that whatever buildings or monuments or office spaces that they are designing, they need to be accessible for everyone. Second one is personally, which I find it very annoying. It might not be the same for everyone, but I find people who stare whenever I go in any public space like metro or even just buying groceries for my home.
Mhm.
I don't like people who stare.
Yeah.
I think you should stop staring so that the other person won't feel like a freak or alien.
Exactly. Yeah.
Third point, which you also mentioned in your example, is the upbringing.
Right.
So, kids personally, I feel they are the hardest one to explain if I have to explain them my situation.
Kids are curious. Exactly.
Yeah, so they're so curious, but they are so innocent at the same time.
Mhm.
So they'll ask you so many questions so sweetly, but I don't know how to explain them my situation.
Right.
But
Yeah.
how I related to my example is that there have kids. So I studied at a very regular school, basically no. normal school, not any school with needs or special something.
Yeah.
So I feel that the kids or my friends whom I have studied with have actually benefited from this diversity. So whenever
Could you
further
elaborate
down the
that
line,
part?
yeah. So I feel like whenever now going down the line, they see a person with disability or their kids see a person with a disability. They know how to tell their kids the answer, or they know how to react while living with a person with disability.
Correct. Yeah.
So I think knowingly or unknowingly, while studying, while playing in my childhood, the kids around me must have got some influence or some lessons that will tell them how to behave along with a differently able.
Yeah. The thing is that they shouldn't be told how to behave. Firstly, the question
Yeah,
shouldn't even arise that
actually.
how to behave.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
because the thing is, I graduated in psychology, and I
Okay.
had an entire module on disability studies. So I am
Wow.
aware of it. People who have studied it are aware of it. I have a friend whose parents are mute and deaf. I'm aware of them. I'm aware because of them also. But people who
Yeah,
have they have no pair, no connection with
yeah, yeah.
disability studies or people with disabilities, they are totally clueless.
Right.
So I think what we are having right now is for such people to know that where all you can make amends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
So
with education and with a disabled person around them, I think people stop seeing pity for them,
yeah,
stop feeling
yeah,
pity for them. I think that is also one change that I would love to see in the world. Don't pity anyone, but it's okay to see what all can you learn and what all like you want to take it with you.
yeah. Actually, that everything boils down to that. What is it that you can
Yeah,
learn from the other person?
yeah,
Simple as that.
yeah,
Yeah. Tell me one thing. When I asked you what's your goal, your
yeah.
straightaway answer was that I want people, I want to achieve that level of normalcy, right?
Right.
If it's not too vulnerable or personal, if you could just elaborate on that point of normalcy.
Sure. So, like before starting this answer, my answer would be completely based on my life. So, it is what I have learned and what I have admired to reach normalcy or to have a normal life.
Mm-hmm.
So, coming back to your question, I have always wanted a normal life, but I think that is not going to happen. To say now that, similarly, just like you are lifting your glass with one hand, there is a pen near me.
Yeah.
So, I lift pen with both my hands.
Yes, right, right.
So normal is not the norm that I can easily
That's
relate
true.
myself to, but I always admire ki, matlab, I wish I also live a normal life. So by living a normal life, I want to refer living independently.
Correct. Yeah.
So the living independently didn't came so easy or so natural to me.
Mm.
I had to fight for it. I had to come up with solutions as problems appear. Just
Mm-hmm.
a simple task of even using a metro card or paying someone with hard cash was
Mm.
not normal to me before I moved to Delhi.
Right. Mm.
It had to thought through. I had to plan it, practice it, fail,
Yeah.
and then repeat all over again.
Mm. Correct. So, like, that's the level of. I think you then want to attain a level of independence wherein people aren't interrupting your actions.
Yeah,
So, like,
yeah,
if you're doing something, you don't want people to come on to you, let me help you. You can do it
yeah,
yourself. Basically, that,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Never stop yourself from asking a differently able people to help,
Yeah.
but never force yourself your help on them.
Yeah, exactly. That's the point. Yeah.
Never do that.
So this was probably last month, and there is this TED
Okay.
talk also. I don't remember the name of the person. So she had cerebral palsy, I think. a palsy, I think. And she said that I don't want people to touch me and touch my hand and then help me. I want people to ask me first, and then I
Right.
can allow them to
Right.
help me. That's
Yeah.
the right way of doing it, and that made so much of sense. So tell me one thing.
Yeah.
Uh, you having this disability wasn't something that came to you from birth, right? It
Right.
came to you after an accident, and so you've actually led both the spectrums of your life.
Right.
So I want to understand, how was the metamorphosis like? I want to understand that process of it, so that people can actually understand the struggle of it firstly, and then
Right.
the more they hear about this, the more they'll able to relate and be more aware of what they're doing and saying.
Yeah. So I think that was the most toughest time for me as well as my family. I think
Exactly.
more for them because I was mostly unconscious truly, but
Mhm.
they were dealing with their child in ICU most of the time. They had to take a call for my amputation and see me in pain every day. I think that trauma still haunts them, and they start crying whenever this topic is discussed with them. So I think it was not much for me, but it was like a life changing for them because they must be having thoughts like what will happen to his future, how will he live further,
Yeah.
and plus society pressure is always there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I woke up in hospital, it was almost like a month later. I didn't even know that something has happened, but I knew something bad is happening because
Mm-hmm.
whenever they were visiting ours and whenever my mom used to visit me there, she was
Yeah.
mostly crying.
Mm-hmm.
But I think since this happened in a very early age, I wasn't really shattered per se because I never realized the aftermaths of it. For me, it was like getting hurt while I was playing. And I'm really glad that they never shied away from it or never stopped me from experimenting or say कि हाँ बेटा अभी ये हो गया है तो ऐसे नहीं करना. They never restrict my activities. They never stopped me from experimenting.
Okay.
Eventually, like after a few months, so I didn't even actually appear for my third standard exams. So I was gone with the medical and straightly I went to fourth standard.
Mm.
And eventually, when I started going back to school, the friend circle that I had, they planned greeting cards for me when I came back and get well soon and it's good to have you back and everything like that.
Yeah.
So it felt really amazing that there is a life waiting for me.
Mm. Yeah.
I'm not meant to be bedridden or be dependent on anyone. For
True.
initial 2 years, my mom used to accompany me for
Mm.
all my written work and all the bits that I needed in my schooling.
Mm.
Eventually, like I started with experimenting with my writing, cycling, and doing basically everything that a normal teenage boy must be doing at that time. So I succeeded in some while I failed in some.
Okay.
10 years later, when I lived in Delhi for almost 3 years, 3 months alone, that I became fully independent. I
Okay.
realized what all I can do, how can I do it, what were my limitations, how to go past them. So, along with my independence, I think self realization of my body also happened in those 3 months.
Like, you gauged your endurance level, the things you
Hmm.
can actually do without anyone's help.
Yeah.
Wow. That's nice. So, what did you do in those 3 months? You just came to Delhi for what reason?
No, so basically, after my 12th standard, I started pursuing CA.
Okay.
And I always dreamt of going to college because I scored good marks in 10th as well as 12th. But
Yeah.
because of this dependence on my parents, I
Mm.
wasn't really allowed.
Okay.
But that thought always remained in my head. And after 9 months or so, I told my parents that I cannot stay here. I am going to Delhi. Although I went for my CA coaching, but I told them that if I survive these 3 months, then I'm gonna take admission in Delhi University.
Okay.
Those 3 months were like you can say probation period for me that that I had to take from them, so that like there's a very famous quote that एक छोटा पेड़ बड़े पेड़ की छाया में कभी नहीं उग सकता.
Yeah,
So
true.
I need to leave my hometown. I need to leave this dependence in order to grow.
So that was like that testing phase of yours then.
Yeah. So metro in Delhi really amazed me. I actually didn't even know how will I handle cash, or will there be someone who will help me in eating, dressing up, or you can imagine every single thing of my day cannot pass without the help of my parents. Couldn't have crossed. But there I went without thinking about that. But slowly and gradually, I think I went through it, and I took things into my own hands somehow.
How do you stay positive? Won't be the right word because you can't stay positive all the time. None of us can be. But when the going gets tough, what do you exactly do to keep your spirits up and just sail through? Most of your interviews that I've listened to and watched, most of your articles, everything really signifies that you're a very courageous person, someone who doesn't give up easily. So tell me about that.
Thank you. Somehow I feel that optimism is so much embodied in me, just like breathing now.
Okay.
So it took a lot of mind training from the perspective of admirers as well as haters. I think if you listen too much to your admirers, you might get complacent.
Correct.
But if you pay too much attention to your haters, you might get demotivated and will live in self-doubt till your eternity.
Right.
So I have to learn to acknowledge both, but never get bogged down by either. So if something in my day goes wrong, if something in my life goes wrong, I remind myself of three things basically. First, I remind myself of the worst day that has happened in my life, so that I know that this bad day will also pass and I have gone through something much worse.
Yeah.
Second, I remind myself of my best days, so I know what I'm looking forward to.
Okay.
And then I tell myself that tomorrow is going to be a new day.
Wow. I'm going to use this approach of yours next time.
I think because God has always been a good friend to me. He has always sent signals in forms of deeds or gestures by some unknown people in my life. And I just like pause for those moments and see that God is sending me messages that appreciate and see goodness that life has to offer in this world.
And I feel like every person you meet in your life, they have a reason that they're in your life. Every person is destined to be in your life. And
Yeah.
I mean that saying, they say that everything happens for a reason. Every person happens to you for a reason as well.
That's so true. So true.
When was it that you realized that you having your disability was actually an inspiration for many people?
Okay, so I feel that I haven't really done anything worth inspiring others yet. But yeah, there have been appreciation that I have been receiving from people, like once I post my push-up videos or whenever I talk about my life somewhere. But there are few instances where I have helped other amputees who were in a similar shape like me, but they were very new to this. So I helped share my tricks with them so that they also get independent, and they know that life is not gonna end with one accident or incident, that it will go on. There are a lot of people who have struggled, achieved something. I think those are the people that we need to be really inspiring something from. For me, to relate to me, I think everyone has a story to share.
Hmm.
Everyone has their struggles, their experiences, their life stories. So I'm just one of those few people who have a story to share and who has a life lesson to share.
No person is supposed to do big things to be inspiring. It's the small acts that you do can really inspire other people. As simple as that. There are people out there who've done bigger things in life, who've achieved
Yeah.
XYZ kinds of things, but it's just the
True.
small stories, the small experiences that he told me about you made me feel that I need to talk to this guy because it's in his small stories only that people will find inspiration to approach life in a more holistic and in a more optimistic manner. People, they face one small low and then they feel like, oh, life is such a mess. So
Yeah.
I really like how people who have experienced very big lows, deep lows, and how they still persevere, how they still bounce back. That's what I really like. And last thing that I
Yeah.
want to ask all my speakers is that
Yeah.
what's that one habit that has transformed your life as a person?
One thing would be that I know my limitations and I know when to give up. So people say never give up. I don't think so. That is the answer.
Yeah.
I think you should try. You should try and give your best. But there are a few things maybe they are not meant for you. Maybe you have a different reason to be in this world. Maybe God has a different path created for you. Don't stress on it. Even if you are giving your 100% and not able to get through something, uh, see an alternate to it. See a bigger picture of it. Change your plans accordingly. But you should always be willing to move. You should not stop. If
Yeah,
plan A doesn't work, plan B will work. If plan B doesn't work, plan C will work. But
definitely.
never stop. Never get bogged down.
I'm actually, I recently started following this approach. So I wrote this thing down that I'm not going to say that this thing is not for me or this is not my cup of tea unless I've
Yeah.
tried that thing 7 times. And if
Yeah.
after that seventh time I'm still not able to do it, that's when I'll tell people that this is not my cup
That perfectly sums it up. Perfect.
of tea. Okay, thank you, Kshitiz. I really, really liked our conversation. It's a short conversation, but I think it said a lot about you, about your experience, what people should take away from this conversation.
Hopefully, I will be able to add some value. Thank
Definitely.
you for having me. Thank you,
Thank
Ashna.